Hi, Chris Mc Loone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. This is our last episode for the month of April, April 28th, 2025. If it was April, you know what that means. It was FDIC month. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is looking back at FDIC International 2025, some of the things that I saw, some of the things that other people said to me. Some of this I'm going to try to put into the context of some of the other news that we've had this month regarding fire apparatus manufacturing. This has been picking up steam over the past few months with mainstream media, and there's a lot that we can unpack with everything that's going on. But, FDIC International 2025, I'm going to be talking about primarily the exhibits. As we know, fire apparatus and emergency equipment, the exhibits are, our major focus. Of course, any of the training that involves specific products or specific trucks or things of that nature, of course, we're going to touch on as well. And we get a lot of that done in the drill yard. We see a lot of that outside. There were a lot of hands-on with product demonstrations, particularly on the technology side. And I think that's where I'm going to begin. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the technology. We did a number of podcasts during the week while we were there. And I was there for most of them that were, interviews with industry suppliers. And a lot of what we talked about was technology. And it was a slightly different take on some of the technology. It was technology that was there. It's tangible. We can see it. And via the Lucas Oil experience and the next gen tech display area, we got a chance to see a lot of this in effect. One of the things that was over there, I don't think we got to see it take off, but it was a medical, it wasn't a drone, but it was a small medical aircraft that can cover a lot of territory in a reduced time frame than an ambulance that gets dispatched. Can cover several miles in just a few minutes and render aid a lot sooner. That was over there. There was in fact, we're going to talk about it in an upcoming issue, a new product that may be a game changer when it comes to extinguishing electric vehicle fires, the batteries that are in those vehicles. So there were a lot of different things there this year. And when we think of technology, we often think of just, the tech and that sounded goofy when I said that, but we think of the high tech stuff, we're thinking circuit boards, screens, all that kind of stuff. But something like this extinguishing agent, is technology as well. But one of the things that that really impressed me was one company that I interviewed was talking about drone systems, and drone programs, they're not new. There are a number of fire departments that have them. If they don't have them themselves, they have access to them via the police department. In my May editorial, which is coming up, you should see it in a couple of weeks, I discuss a recent response that I had to an industrial facility, 600,000 square foot facility, where it was very obvious based on reports that we heard coming in and what we saw when we got there, that this was going to be a working fire, that this was going to be an event. There were explosions inside that were ongoing as we got there. It was a complex incident. And it was one where the police department's drones were sent there very early in the game, and they proved to be invaluable to us while we were fighting this fire. We could watch in real time from above the progression of the fire, and it helped us place apparatus, it helped us place hose lines, it helped us place master streams. It was really, and I plan to cover it more in depth. It was really one of the best case studies for drone usage at a fire that I've come across so far. It's dumb luck that it was, at a fire that I was at, but really, I mean, based on some of the things that I've seen, this was really a great use case. But this one company that I was talking to, they weren't talking about necessarily that application. They were talking about drones staged at different places in a municipality based on where a fire might be. So think of your boxes. Think of your map boxes, your map pages. One drone might cover one specific collection of boxes in your area. These drones would be launched at the point of dispatch. So you have a dispatcher dispatching the call. There's going to be a drone pilot there at the dispatch center that's going to launch one of these things to go to wherever you're going. And it's going to be able to provide to us, as we respond, real-time live information, either on a screen, like on an MDC, as you respond, or the dispatcher is going to be able to communicate the conditions that these drones are witnessing, in real time. It was a real neat concept, and certainly one that bears a lot of investigation, because really what it does is it changes how we acquire the data a little bit as we respond to a call. I've always been brought up through the fire service, your size up begins at the point of dispatch. You're listening to the address. You're thinking, okay, it's a non-commercial building. I know that block in my district. That's all twin dwellings. They're all twins there. So we have to be thinking about that wall in the middle. We have to be thinking about possible fire spread that way. There are a lot of different things that we think about as for me, since I'm a volunteer, as I'm driving from my house to the firehouse, based on what I've already heard from the dispatch, I'm already sort of sizing things up in my mind. Of course, if you have a chief officer who gets there first, they're going to provide a size up. And that's really how we do it. Our data at that point is really, our memory and what our eyes are seeing at that moment in time. But we do need to wait until we get there many times. A drone is going to be able to get there sooner. They're going to see faces at windows. They're going to see smoke conditions. They're going to see fire conditions. And that will help the officer in the front seat of that first responding pumper make the decisions that they need to make on the way there. It's just a different way of acquiring data, processing that data, and making decisions based on that data. So a little bit of technology that way. Some of the technology, though, also made me wonder, this is talking about apparatus design a little bit, are we designing apparatus today for our current firefighters who are moving into pump operator positions or aerial operator positions? And what I mean by that, there were some new electronic pump controls introduced at the show. And it was, again, it was a touch screen on a pump panel. I've heard on different occasions, we need to stop fighting fires like it's 1995, which to me does not seem that long ago. But when you think about the fact that that was 30 years ago, there have been a lot of innovations and advancement during that time that I can absolutely understand exactly why people are saying that. But also, are we designing trucks? Are we designing our apparatus? Should the same thing be said? We have to stop designing apparatus as if it's 1995. This goes beyond putting USB ports, so that folks can charge their phones. We've heard that, the firefighters today, this is what they've had in their hand the entire time for that they've been alive. They pretty much came up with them. There is a comfort level there. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't, establish a comfort level with push-pull valves. But why not optimize the rigs for the people who are going to be operating them? You really can do so much with placing these touchscreens basically anywhere on the truck that you can find a spot. And so, it really made me stop and think a little bit about whether or not we are designing these trucks with the current operators in mind. And I fall into that trap as well all the time. I've talked about how, the first truck that we got with a pressure governor, I was always wanting to change it to RPM. I just liked turning the dial myself and getting everything to where we were. Well, let me tell you, I was the first in-pump operator for that industrial complex fire. And it was a great comfort that night to be able to set that pressure governor for where I needed it to be and adjust everything else. It certainly, proved its worth to me that evening. Not that I hadn't already realized it, but I'll tell you, that was a great example for just having it there. It's one less thing that you really have to be thinking about. You set it, you move everything else, you adjust the discharges for everything else, and then we move along. So that's a piece of technology that, again, when we first got it, and really it was about 15 years ago that we got our first truck with a pressure governor on it. Like I said, I was always changing that to RPM because that was my comfort level. And I will never forget the chief engineer at that time, who is probably 20 or so years older than me. And I remember asking him about how to change it to RPM. And he goes, "Why would you want to do that?" Now, this was a guy who, who was older than me, certainly came up differently than I did, was driving trucks before there were, they were diesel engines in them. They were probably still gas engines. And, we were probably still running 3 inches, our main supply line back then. Just a different time. And this is him saying, "Why would you do that, Chris?" Right away he saw the value of that. So again, so where am I going with that? With these electronic control systems for fire trucks, we really need to be thinking about not employing them just to be tech savvy or tech advanced, but really think about the people who are operating these trucks most of the time now. These are the people that we need to be designing for. The more we kind of keep that in mind, the better it's going to be. So I wanted to also sort of put FDIC 2025 in the context of what we're seeing in the mainstream media right now with regard to apparatus manufacturers and the delays that we're seeing and the costs that we are seeing. I make it to as many booths as I possibly can at the show. One of the things that I'm lucky about is that I get to be on that floor before it opens. So I get to see a lot of the trucks that are there before it opens. I can't tell you how many stock rigs were available to look at this year. Some of them deliver. Some of them already not deliver, but already sold. We're heading out of there, either back to the factory real quick for some final upfitting, or they were going straight out to where their final destination was. There were a lot of stock rigs. In our April issue this month, if you haven't seen it yet, the cover story was on stock rigs. Simply exploring that as an option. They have become a little bit more prevalent as an option given the overall atmosphere of what we've been doing. And when you think about everything that's going on in the industry right now, the reports that are out there, and you think about, what we can do on our end and what the manufacturers are doing on their end to try to ease that pain, stock rigs are a viable option here. If you can do it. I've always said, if it works for your district. If it doesn't, then hey, then you know where you got to go. But if it does, you can get these sometimes crazy amounts. If they're on the lot, you can get them. You can get them right away. Otherwise, if they're coming down the line, they're going to get to you a little faster. Stock does not mean that you cannot make a decision about things like a light bar, if that light bar, if it's on the line, if the one that you've chosen, the model that you've chosen is on the line, it's coming through, but the light bar isn't in on it yet, let them know. There's probably a change that can be made at that point. It does not mean that there are no options to you at all, but there's a give and take with everything that we do in fire apparatus specification. There is always a give and take. There's always a push and a pull. If you want this, you might have to give up on this a little bit. So there are certain things that, that with a stock rig are going to be set. But there are things that you can do, maybe at the dealer once it gets there, maybe back at the factory. The main thing is that a stock rig is not totally without options, without some custom areas on it. And that was critical. And I think that, there was definitely there were a lot of stock rigs, a lot of demos. Sometimes they're called demos, but there were a lot of stock rigs on the floor. And, if it works for your area, then it is definitely something to think about. But think about that in the greater context of everything that's being talked about right now. And just keep in mind that the manufacturers are indeed creating options that can get you a truck at a reduced cost and in a quicker period of time than if you choose to go the custom route. And that, when you remove complexities that some of us add in that process, it really can speed the process up. But also, if you are going the custom route, don't forget that it is absolutely critical that you nail down what it is you are looking for early in the game, even before your pre-construction meeting, because any changes you make after that are going to add a lot of delay. So, make sure that you are speccing, that you get those specs dead on right in the beginning, so that later on you don't get put back to the somewhere toward the back of the line again as you go on. But really, I think that it is important that we talk about that, talk about what is being done versus, some of the other things that are out there. There are a lot of options out there, a lot of manufacturers out there, that can help you get the rig that your community needs, that your firefighters want, at the price and at in a time period that works for all. And maybe you want to add some of these electronic controls to it because you're thinking to yourself, well, right now my pump operators are 28, 29, 30, maybe up to 35. These guys are used to touchscreens. They're very it's not only that they're used to it. You got to remember, they're very comfortable with it. They're probably more comfortable than someone my age. I'm 51. Someone my age am I comfortable with touchscreens on the phones and everything? Sure. But is my confidence level in having them control things where someone else's would be? No. That's just the bottom line. But I've got X amount of years left being a pump operator. It's time for me to adapt to what my guys are looking for right now versus forcing them to adapt to what my needs are. There are more 25 to 35-year-olds than there are of me right now. So, but that comfort level, it is amazing. And we all talk about it. People my age, my kids do this, my kids do that. It is fascinating how quickly my three boys, 21, 19, and 17, can do things, and can get things figured out on their phone, to address something simple, some simple repair, even on the car. that they can get those things, the information that they get out of them and how they can make them work for them is really, really amazing. And, these electronic controls, that are now, I mean, you think about it. I mean, they're shrinking the size of the pump panel, in many ways. You can theoretically control that pump from anywhere. You could, it's a bad weather-wise out there, unsafe for you to be out on the street. Theoretically, you could do it from the cab. I mean, there are all kinds of, the possibilities are really endless. It's just us finally saying, okay, let's do what we need to do to become more comfortable, with those types of things. So, it's really, FDIC was great this year, 37,000 plus. So, great attendance. There was an energy at the show. And, there really, there was a lot of enthusiasm. We had an advisory board meeting while we were there, came up with a lot of great topics. We've got, a new podcast coming out with Andy Sacadato. He's going to be hosting one on his own. So this is really, really good stuff. We got some really, really fun things that we're looking forward to as we move forward. But it's really, there's a lot going on in fire apparatus right now. A lot of things that have been picked up on. As I said, we are covering that. And when it becomes necessary for us to tell you that what has happened as a result of all those reports, this is how it's going to affect you as the purchaser. Believe me when I tell you, we will be right there with you on that, and we will be covering that and delivering any news regarding that comes up. So again, this has been Chris Mc Loone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. All of our podcasts, as I've said before, are archived at fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcasts. If you have any topics that you would like to like us to cover, let me know, chris.mcloone@clarionevents.com. So again, Chris Mc Loone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Have a good one, everyone, and stay safe.